It's happened. It's finally happened. About a week ago, the Little Nightmares 3 trailer was released. Not only am I going to analyse this trailer, I'm going to review chapter 1 of the podcast story, The Workers Within the Walls. Excuse me, let me put my teeth in. The Workers in the Walls. But first, I'd like to make a quick apology for being away for so long. I've had a couple of other projects on and trying to apply to university to be able to become a game developer. So, get your flashlights ready and let's dive into the depths of Little Nightmares once again. Okay, so I checked out sources like GameSpot, Bloody Disgusting, Push Square, IGN, etc. They're all buzzing about it. They're all saying the same thing. Little Nightmares is going to be released in 2024, but we're not quite sure when yet. So can't wait for that tantalizing information to come. But I must say it thoroughly captivated me, the trailer, but it kind of felt like a departure from previous games with Mono in 6, or the emo kid, aka the runaway kid, and any of the other children we've seen in past games, and don't forget the comics. So this could be a potential standalone game in the same world, or there is a subtle tie-in somewhere, and I suggest this subtle tie-in because there are a few familiar faces and locations that might indicate a connection. But, and it's a big but, I personally believe the biggest Easter egg we have at this current moment in time is the podcast story I mentioned, where Newt recants her dreams to Dr. Otto the counsellor, and oh my god, is it the best thing I've listened to in a while. I highly recommend this. So, just going to touch upon the gameplay mechanics that have changed this time. So in previous games we had control of one character and we had maybe a sidekick, but we didn't have control of both characters. In this game we have two options. Number one, we control both playable characters, low and alone, for a co-op experience, or number two, a solo adventure with the AI controlling the other one. Pretty cool, right? I just kind of hope they don't put any dialogue in it or add weapons that change your stats and stuff and it becomes an actual RPG, because that will just take away from the theme of Little Nightmares. So let's dive into this cryptic trailer. And first we've got some ravens looming, which kind of create the ominous atmosphere. So I initially thought, I had a bit of a joke with myself, could these ravens be Odin's, Hugin and Munin? Then I thought, maybe not, that's a bit far-fetched, right? Doesn't fit in with the themes. So, but anyway, we still know that ravens signify death or bad fortune, which seems quite fitting for our opening desert scene. We're littered with suitcases. Remember, suitcases that look very familiar. Remember back in the moor? Okay. So, if we move further into the trailer, we meet our second character, which I would presume is female because of her shorter, smaller stature. I know that's an assumption, but still, I'm working with it. Look at the way they're decked out. Pretty peculiar, right? Have you noticed how they're wearing masks? Maybe this could be a small hint towards Mono's fascination with masks and hats. Though probably not for the same reason, right? I'd like you to pay close attention to the male protagonist's clothing and mask. They're more so the mask than the clothes. There's a story in the Little Nightmares comics called The Tale of the North Wind, where two children are running from the North Wind, and the North Wind is chasing them down to presumably eat them in some way, capture them, kill them. As we all know, dreaded things happening in these worlds. So the older brother and the younger sister, So these two children are chased. They eventually come across a barn where they try and take a respite, but it's a very quick respite. The North Wind inevitably catches up with them and starts trying to coerce the brother out to give up, to come to the North Wind, right? Unbeknownst to him, his sister is no longer with the living, but that's another tale for another time. But the point I'm trying to make is that the North Wind uses what looks to be like skeletons of birds to attack the male protagonist in our game. The point I'm trying to make is that the North Wind uses what looks to be skeleton birds to attack the children. And have you noticed that our male protagonist in the game is wearing the skull of a bird as a mask? It's pretty far-fetched, but a whisper of a hair's tie-in. So I'm quite proud with that theory, actually. So as we're moving forward through the trailer, we do see familiar faces and locations, such as the gluttonous people that were on board the moor. Do you remember where Six was trying to get across the tables just before she was going to battle the lady? Yes, I got eaten quite a few times on that run, quite a fair few times. And then we have the teddy bear that was an important piece from the hospital episode in Little Nightmares 2. By Jove, that X-ray puzzle was so annoying. It took me forever to get that X-ray, to that teddy bear X-rayed. And then, about halfway through the trailer, I think maybe just over, it's after the mirror, we have a very hard to miss baby. I did initially think this could be the boy from the online comics, but then I remembered that he was wearing some sort of blindfold and was taken by the Thin Man, which leaves me less certain this baby is connected to that boy. Because if you've looked, the baby seems to have one of those all-seeing eyes. It's a bit of a run and hide situation with that baby, I think. So I haven't really got much information on the baby other than it could be the boy or it could not be. But what is interesting though is they've kept with the theme of the mirrors. And have you noticed in this one that the mirror is unbroken? And the lady broke the mirrors because she didn't like her reflection because of how ugly she was. Yada, yada, yada. So what if this is her undoing? What if this is a tie-in to this? What if this is a way to defeat her? Or it could be the prequel to the prequel to the prequel. Yeah, that kind of works. It kind of works. The other interesting thing that I picked up on was the characters phase through these mirrors like Mono did through the TVs. But I guess we'll have to wait for more details before drawing any solid conclusions about these two pieces of information. Or in fact, any of it. At this moment in time, I'm just speculating everything. Mwahahaha. Okay, so moving on to the podcast story, which is what I really, really, really wanted to talk about in the first place. So what if this world of Little Nightmares is actually fabricated in a sense? And I don't mean in a bad way. I mean in the idea that the world could be a manifestation of children's traumas, and it's a coping mechanism of the way these traumas manifest themselves into a nightmare disorder. Here we have, like I said earlier, Dr. Otto the counsellor and Noon. I'm going to not try and give too much away, but I am hoping that you've all listened to it by now. If not, then please do hurry and go listen to it. So Dr. Otto at some point in the first story mentions that there's this other girl that suffers with a similar disorder to Noon's nightmare disorder, but on a grander scale. It's only been since Noon has he rekindled his interest in finding out why these things happen and how they're able to have such a connection of senses to these nightmares. Okay, so this is why I think it's more of a fabrication than anything. Okay, so I'm going to get you to listen to a clip.
But one phrase in particular has become an earworm of sorts.
He was right in front of me, breathing hard. That's what I remember most. The awful smell. Like when sausage goes bad.
Quite creepy, right? So she mentions we've got someone breathing in front of her extremely hard. So this could be an anonymous, a looming threat, such as the janitor. Maybe not the baby, because we don't know if the baby is living, but we'll put him in there for now. And then she mentions that he smells awful, like when sausage goes bad. And the only time we come across sausages is in the emo kid's journey before he gets eaten. So is this a connection back to 6? Is this a connection back into the fabrication of the Little Nightmares world? So the way she says that about him heavily breathing, he smelled rotten like when sausage goes off, this could be the dark reality of them all. So this could be the notion of children being turned into sausages. Do you remember? 6 ate a lot of sausages, and then the emo kid. And this illustrates the grim and twisted nature of how the Maw works. And this detail reveals that the children's nightmares have a foundation in the brutal reality they face. Once again, a coping mechanism. This kind of ties into the idea that the nightmare world is a reflection of her traumas and fears. I'm no psychologist at all. I'm just theorizing here. But it could also symbolize corruption. It's kind of like the imaginary sausages going bad could be a metaphor for the corruption of innocence and preservation of their childhood. So let's listen to the second clip. I have only chosen so many, so I'm not going to go through the whole story.
Knowing I didn't belong, I hid behind a wooden box. Peeking up, I saw other small shadows entering the room. They stepped by each other silently. Most passed into different doors, but 2 stayed behind, searching through the springs. They were not children, not at all. Even in dim light, they remained shadows. Things not quite there, as if forgotten, not wanting to be seen. They held nasty tools, and their empty faces showed they weren't very bright. Both stood, looked down the passageway, and jumped. With nowhere to go, I did the same, climbing to the platform below. I finally saw what was making all that noise. Golden spinning wheels. Fat ones, small ones, skinny ones, and they went down so deep I couldn't see the end. I didn't know what they were until that faraway feeling came back and told me. They were gears, with teeth which locked perfectly into one another, clicking on and on the song that never stopped. There were hundred of the dull little shadows, working to keep the mechanisms going.
Okay, did that not get the hair standing up on the back of your neck? Oh my god, the sound effects were so cool. I actually kind of thought it sounded like spiders scurrying around at first, but then realised it could be a fire or it could be something moving instead of a spider. But anyway, that was my initial thing, which is a bit silly. So, she mentions the shadow children as workers. The description kind of felt like the shadow children from the emo kids' journey, and then it also maybe made me think of the gnomes, but maybe not quite so much the gnomes as much. So these shadowy figures she thought were children and then weren't children and then were children. So these shadow children, maybe they could have been individuals that had been transformed into something less human. Do you remember the emo kids' journey where you had to fight them off with a flashlight? Oh my god, was that so frustrating? And the fact that she said they stood silently, what if this seems to be, if the forgotten aligns with the themes of the children being exploited and disregarded by the moor's inhabitants? You know, kind of done with you. You've served your purpose kind of thing. Moving on, as I mentioned, the gnomes. It reminded me a bit of the gnomes. The idea that these shadowy figures might be related to the gnomes is interesting because they're small, mysterious creatures that appear throughout the game out of nowhere. But then she saw their faces, so it also then made me think not, because that's quite a big thing with the gnomes. You don't actually get to see their faces, but you know they were once children. But if you want to go along that theme, it could suggest that it's also a product of the Moor's dark experiments and the manifestations of children's suffering. What about the fact that these so-called children are lacking faces could symbolise the loss of identity and humanity that they've suffered within the Moor, or outside of the Moor, but within the Moor, because they're all fabricating this world to try and cope with what's happened to them. So this just kind of reduces them to mere shadows of their former selves, a haunting representation of consequences or exploitation. They're very much similar kind of connections here with that kind of theme, which was interesting to me in all honesty. Okay, so on to our third clip.
My body began shaking as I heard them. Shouts and shrieks of pain. All I could do was stare up at the circular walls, which I had just been inside. This was the true building. There were a million rooms like the second one I peered into, all the way up, with hands and limbs reaching out from between the bars that kept them locked in. My heart pounded like one of them. A prisoner.
Oh, did you hear those screams? That would not be a good place to be. It kind of creeps me out a bit. So with that one, it reminded me back again at the hospital episode where I know there were mannequins. Don't get me wrong, I know the mannequins, but it was where Mono was being chased by all these mannequins, and all of a sudden they stuck their hands out when you were doing the last run, the last sprint home. They stuck their hands out of the grates and the doors, and oh my god, between the bars as well. That was just that was heart pounding, that was. But there's a similar theme back to that one. And what if this is children trying to get away but can't because there's always someone pulling them back? What if this isn't just a nightmare world fabricated because they're trying to deal with their abusers. But what if it's the counselors and the doctors that are looking after them that they're trying to get away from? But those pulsing walls, trying to save Six, that was just like kind of scary. So what if the walls are living, and what if they're more of a representation of individuals? Quite a bit of a weird one. And on to our final clip. Bit of this one isn't spooky in the sense that it's in the nightmare world, but the way he says this, it just kind of ran a chill down my spine. Just didn't seem right.
Now, surely you're exhausted.
I don't want to go to my room to sleep. Will you walk me back?
Of course. And we can't forget your nightly confectionery. Here, Noon. Take your pick. Sweets for my sweet.
Well, sweets for my sweet? No, that's just such a creepy doctor offering you sweets just to try and make you do something you don't want to do. I don't really have a theory on that one, but it could be a controlling thing. Children are actually quite naive if you think about it sometimes, even adults. Yeah, it just kind of creeped me out a bit. So we've kind of touched up on the fact that this is a coping mechanism through the creation of this nightmare world, and it's a collective mind, like a hive mindset through these children that are struggling so much, and they're externalizing it to confront their fears and traumas. Maybe once again, I am not a therapist or a psychologist, so just take maybe what I say with a pinch of salt when it comes to this information. Then we've got the eyes as observers. This could, the baby's got an eye. There's always an eye on the wall. There's always an eye on the doors. There's an eye everywhere, even if it is watching you as a camera as well. And this eye could be the representation of the perception of being watched and analysed and evaluated by external forces, aka Dr. Otto and alike. So it aligns with the feeling of vulnerability and maybe a lack of agency that the abused children might have experienced. Dr. Otto's interactions with Noon could be a manifestation of the power dynamic between the children and the adults in their lives. This is going to be a connection to the next game. I don't think we should take this lightly. I think you need to listen to every story going here. But I really, really, really want to talk about the next set, and I really, really, really want to know what happens. I can't believe I have to wait a week or two for the next one to come out. So if you have any other theories about how Noon might be connected to this Little Nightmares game, drop a comment below. And in the meantime, I'd like you to keep those flashlights ready, stay curious, and let's dive into the depths of Little Nightmares once again. Oh, and before I go, watch out for that creepy giant baby with the eye. It's definitely a hide and run situation. Mata ne!